I shamelessly kissed my ex at a reunion. When he found out, it changed everything. Hello, Reddit guys. It had been a long time for me since I last came here because of the hard time I have been going through. But here I am, this time not as a reader, but as a writer, telling the story of how I cheated on my husband and how my life got destroyed. I don't even know where to begin, but first I will introduce myself. My name is Claire, and I am 32 years old. I got married when I was 27 to the one I thought was the love of my life, Steve. I and Steve were considered to be the perfect couple, but no one knows what goes on behind the closed doors of a home. To be honest, everything was perfect at the beginning. We loved each other, and we had a great passion. Also, our economic situation was great. We had a nice apartment, and we loved our jobs. He was an architect, and I was working as a marketing manager. I knew Steve when I first started working. We used to work on a project together, and since then we have become inseparable. But things happened, and what looked perfect was nothing but a lie. Everything fell apart, and I saw my life being destroyed, and I could not help it. I could just watch it being destroyed and nothing more. One night my college friends organized a reunion, and of course I went there. In this reunion, there was also my ex, John. He was my first love, and I guess my heart never let go of him. It all started before the reunion. Maybe it started because I forgot how it felt to be seen and loved. Because, yeah, my husband was a good man, but not a great husband. Although, he was steady and also loyal. But so is a puppy, right? Sometimes I felt like I could have just gone a puppy instead of getting married. You know the man who never forgets to lock the door or check the filter on his wife's car? Yeah, that was Steve. He also helped me with the things in the house. I mean, like washing the dishes or folding the laundry. He did all those things without being asked to, but the problem was that he stopped looking at me the way he used to. Like a husband should have looked at his wife. Yeah, he gave me usual compliments like, "You look great, honey," or that eye makeup was cute, but over time, listening to the same two compliments got really annoying. I wanted something more. I wanted a man who couldn't stop looking at me. Steve started seeing me as a partner and maybe as a best friend too, but he didn't see me as a woman. And definitely he didn't see me as someone he desired. Our conversations were all about groceries, calendars, and bills, and were very short and logical. He told me he was happy in his life, but that wasn't what I wanted to hear. I felt invisible, and I needed to be seen. So when the invitation came on my email about this party or reunion, I definitely decided to go. I thought I needed that. I needed to get distracted and see my old friends. I don't want to lie to you, as soon as I read the invitation, I thought about John and if he was going to be there. Inside of my heart, I was hoping he would be there. As I previously said, John was my first love. We studied marketing at the same college. We were really very close. So close that I thought that we were never getting apart. I couldn't imagine my life without him. But things happen, and life goes on. John was nothing like Steve. He was unpredictable, he loved adventures, and he was romantic as well. He would always take out the best of me. It was all good and fun until we finished college and he had to move abroad. I was never the type for a long-distance relationship, so he decided to end it before it would hurt us. The rest is history. Life went on, and I met Steve, my husband, but I never stopped thinking about John, thinking about us. I don't think there was anything wrong with that. It wasn't that easy to let go of my first love, and marriage doesn't change that. Certainly when I got the invitation, I was just thinking about having some fun, and I never thought about what would happen next. That night I decided to wear a black dress, one I had not touched in years. Strange how it would still fit me. That means I was still hot and sexy. My body had not changed a bit. Still, I was invisible to my husband, who made me feel like I was just his wife and not a woman anymore. So yeah, that night I looked so good, so hot. I needed to be seen and noticed, so I also wore red lipstick, which completed the total look. Maybe inside of me I wanted John to notice me, I wanted John to be there. I needed to see him and bring back the old times together. I finally got there. The party was being held at a fancy restaurant. I went there alone, and as soon as I got there, the first person I noticed was John. Our eyes met and we smiled. I felt like nothing had changed, like we were young and in love again. My stomach fluttered, and I struggled to control my emotions as I was walking there. I didn't want him or anyone else to understand how I was feeling, and what was going on inside of me. I said hi to everyone, and we started talking and smiling with each other. We also drank a little. John and I talked about our lives. He told me he was not married yet, and he was the marketing director of a famous company. Can you imagine he also asked me to go work with him? He didn't miss a chance, did he? I told him I would think about it. I also told him about my life. I told him I was married, but then he gave me a look, and that broke my heart. I didn't want him to think there was someone else in my life who could replace him, so I told him that I was not happy in my marriage. He asked me if I missed him, and like on default, I said every day. So yeah, I mostly talked to him the whole dinner. After the dinner, we decided to go for some drinks in a club, and I was so happy about it. I will be honest and tell you the truth. I felt like a teenager again, and I didn't want the night to finish. I wanted it to last forever. During that night, I forgot I was married. Maybe I wanted to forget. One drink after another, and we both lost it. That night we kissed. I thought it was just an innocent kiss that was not going to hurt anyone, and I would be able to end things there. But I was wrong. I would not end things there. Anyway, that night I drove home feeling a little happy, but also so freaking frightened of what I had done. I tried to convince myself that it was just a mistake that would not hurt anyone, and Steve would never find out. While I was convincing myself that it was okay, and I was not going to do anything anymore that would destroy my marriage, including John, I got a message from him telling me, "Tell me you didn't feel the same last night." This message came the next morning while I was taking a shower. I read the message, hoping my husband didn't read it before me. I threw the phone away thinking that I would not answer his message, and I was not going to start an affair with him. The whole day, I could not stop looking at my phone. It was like all the memories of our college days had come back again too. And I just couldn't stop thinking how happy I was with him. And at a point during my lunch break, I replied to John's message telling him, "You know we both felt it, but we can't do that." No matter what I said, that door was now open, and it would never close. I knew it because I started it. So it all started this way, one message after another, and I ended up meeting him after some days just for a coffee. Just for a coffee ended up being some great sex hours at his apartment. I couldn't believe myself. Every day I tried to convince myself that this was going to be okay and I was going to give up on John because I still loved my husband. I still loved Steve, but I couldn't ignore the feelings I had for John. I told myself that this was going to be my secret and I was going to bury him somehow before it ruined everything. But you know how it works. You know how secrets rot, and eventually, at some point, they leak. However John became important, he was my escape. While the relationship with my husband was coming down, I don't know if there actually was a relationship. He worked all the time, we both did. And when we were home, we talked about general things like bills, groceries, and how our day at work was. It had been a long time since we had sex, and we were just like friends who shared a house. To be honest, I thought that my sexual relationship with John would help me save me my marriage. You all would think I was an idiot to think that, but I genuinely thought that if I was happy, I would be able to concentrate more on my marriage. Sex with John was amazing, and with him I felt like I never had before. We had this great passion I never had felt with my husband. The truth is that the two of us were not afraid to try new things in bed, and the pleasure we took from each other was immense. That is why I could not give up on him. I know how it is. I know I destroyed my marriage for this pleasure, but you know what? I thought I loved John. Love made things much harder. I could not leave John because I thought I loved him, and I had become addicted to him. I can't tell if during that time I was addicted to him or to the sex with him. Anyway, I could not stop thinking of him. Even when I was at home in bed with my husband, I wanted him to be with me, and I imagined sexy scenes of the two of us having sex in that bed while my husband was cuddling me. Yes, I know I was addicted, but I could not end it. It had become a purpose in itself. So I started to be less careful while hiding my affair. I started sending nudes to John and sex messages that I didn't care to delete. I didn't think Steve would ever doubt because regardless of how he didn't know how to romance a woman, he was loyal like a damn puppy. Whenever I met John, it was during work hours or I made some excuses about late shift at work, and Steve ate it all up. Also started meeting John at hotel rooms. I wanted to experience new things with him, like having sex in the car. And we did that too. Can you imagine I was also thinking of inviting him home because I wanted to have sex with him in every place in it, and I wanted the house to remind me of him. I wanted him in all the important aspects of my life. You will call me crazy, but I don't think you have the right to do so if you've not fallen in love. But I did all these things, and I won't lie to anyone anymore. I'm doing my best to be as open and honest to everyone, but more importantly, myself. Yes, this might make you think differently of me, but so be it. Your thoughts do not affect my commitment to honesty. I think it's important to tell my story as it actually was and with the feelings I had. Did I make a mistake? Absolutely. Did I find a brief happiness in it? Yes, I did. I continued my hidden relationship with John for around 3 months, and over time I found that it was taking over my life. During this time, I found that I started to lose intensity that I usually feel for my work and my daily duties. I started to act very strange out of the blue, to the extent that my coworkers noticed that something was wrong with me. They could sense that I was responding differently, distracted, confused, maybe even not responding, for example, doing my job, with the appropriate degree of attention. They also couldn't help but see John's regular stops at the office and thought that was odd and very suspicious. I really don't understand how it became my coworkers' business to see if it's my husband visiting me or someone else. Mind your fucking business, people. Anyways, during this period, I think I was finally happy. I found peace with John, and I was able to enjoy my relationship with Steve as well. Now, his lack of romance didn't upset him. I know you all might think I'm a bad woman for having an affair, but hold your opinion before you walk a mile in my shoes with a man who doesn't know there of romance. But I lived that traumatic situation, and when the time came for me to enjoy something, I went ahead and did. But no one likes to see a woman happy. It's a man's world after all, so my happiness didn't last as well. John called me one day to meet for coffee and told me how he isn't able to face himself nowadays. He told me that he doesn't like to be my secret. I asked him what he meant, and he told me that he thinks what we're doing is really wrong and I shouldn't cheat on my husband with him. I couldn't believe him, so I tried to convince him that we were more than an affair. I kept telling him over and over how he was my real true love, but it seemed like he had already made this decision. I even hugged him and begged him to not leave me, but he didn't listen and just left me like that. So like I said, it's been a while that me and Steve had sex together. Maybe a kiss or a peck while I'm leaving for work, but we never took it to that level. So imagine my surprise when I found out that I missed my period. I just couldn't imagine how can I miss my period like that. That it hit me. Me and John got so carried away one night that we did it in his car, and we didn't have any protection, so I told him it's all right. I'll take some after morning pills, but the next morning, I had to rush to the office for some urgent meeting, and it completely slipped my mind. I panicked about it and then rushed to the nearest pharmacy to get a test kit. I cannot tell you the panic I felt in that moment in my office washroom as I saw the pregnancy result twice. I didn't plan this thing with John to reach to this level, but now it had, and I had no fucking clue how I was going to navigate it. I tried calling John, but I couldn't reach him. He had blocked me. That son of a bitch. I felt so sick that I took a half day and went back home. I needed time to think about what I was going to do. I had thought that Steve must be out, so I just laid there on the couch and cried my heart out. Maybe it was the hormones or the fear of the truth coming out, but I was so scared that day. I knew I needed to abort this kid before Steve could find out the truth. I just couldn't imagine losing him because of something like that. So I called my gynec's office and booked an appointment. I explained to them how it was really urgent, and they scheduled me in for the next day. I went to my appointment the next day, and the gynac did all the tests. Unfortunately, I was 8 weeks pregnant. It matched with the time I had sex with John without a condom. I told my doc that I wanted to abort this baby, and she looked at me like I had grown 2 horns. She told me that under Georgia state law, abortion cannot be done past 6 weeks. I couldn't believe it. She told me the Supreme Court has reinstated the ban in October 2024, and therefore I could not abort this baby. It felt like the world was eating me up. I went back home in a daze. I didn't know what I wanted to do next. My marriage was on the verge of falling apart because of this secret. But then I thought of something. If I couldn't abort this baby, then I was going to have it with Steve. We had occasional sex at that time, and I didn't think he had any reason to doubt me. I knew he would be beyond ecstatic to know he's going to be a father. Steve's father passed away when he was little, and I knew he wanted to have a child and do all those things with him that he missed out. So I called his office and told him to come back home as soon as I had a surprise for him. He chuckled and told me that I had forgotten, but he had a dinner meeting that day, and he will be home as soon as possible. I wasted no time and started preparing for the surprise. I ordered a cup which said Dad, and when Steve came back home, I went up and hugged him. He was genuinely surprised to receive that warm welcome from me. I told him he's going to be a father, and the surprise was on his way beyond anything. I gave him the cup, and he hugged me like I was so important to him. That night, I slept with relief because I was able to navigate this life storm. Even if John left me, I still had Steve, and I wasn't going to let him go. I was not meant for that single mother lifestyle I saw on Instagram. I needed stability, and I needed Steve, and obviously I loved him too. Me and Steve were happy. He told me he would come with me to my next appointment, but I couldn't let him know that I wanted abortion, so I made some excuses and told him I'll handle it myself. Steve paid me attention, took care of little things like massaging my feet while I watched Netflix, and told me his plans with our baby. I was in my office one day going through the nursery ideas Steve had sent me when the door opened and John walked in. I didn't expect him to come after leaving me like that. He asked if my husband knew that the baby he plans on raising isn't even his. I told him that it was none of his business and he should just go. But he didn't listen and kept on blabbering about how I was a characterless woman cheating on my husband and then making him raise another man's baby. I couldn't believe the nerve of this guy. I told him that if he had not left me that day, then we would be having this baby together, but he left me no options, and now he's blaming me for how I made things work. I thought John would leave and things would go back to normal, but no, that day became the worst day of my life as the door opened, and it was Steve. He was not smiling at me like he had started doing lately. Instead, he looked at me like I was some garbage. While I was completely shocked to see him there, John stood like it was all expected. I kept looking between them to understand what's going on when John said that he called Steve because his conscience wouldn't let him live if he broke another's man house, so he called him to tell him the truth. But when he got to know I was pregnant, he realized that I had lied to Steve about everything, so he called him to here to give him the proof of my betrayal. Conscience, my ass. He just wanted to break my home. I didn't think of anything, and immediately jumped into Steve's arms and told him that it was all John's plan to break our home. How he wasn't over our breakup, and wanted to break my marriage. I kept on telling him that he knew that I would never do anything like that, but he wasn't listening to me. He was listening to the audio playing on John's phone. It was my voice, me begging John to not leave me, that I loved him and that my marriage with Steve wasn't even real. He doesn't make me feel anything. He was just a formality. I couldn't handle it anymore, and I went to take the phone from John, but the harm was already done, and there was no way to undo it. Steve left without saying anything, and even John left after giving me more education on how to be a better person and all that. Honestly, I could have killed him at that point, but I controlled myself and went to follow Steve. When I entered the home, it didn't look like our home at all. There were random men packing everything. It had been only 2 hours to get me home, and he had already called movers and packers. I couldn't even find him anywhere. It was the packers guy and his secretary at work. I asked him where Steve was, but he just shook his head like talking to me was beyond his status, and said he doesn't want to look at my face and the lawyers will contact me soon. I couldn't believe this guy. I was pregnant and this is how he was treating me? He told me that Steve was moving out and he has already talked to a broker to sell the house as soon as possible. I couldn't even object because it was his house. I had 2 days to empty the house. I didn't know where else to go. My parents lived in another town and I couldn't leave my job. I thought of finding a studio apartment in my budget. While I was hunting for apartments, I got a termination email from my company citing lack of professional behavior and below adequate performance. I texted my boss, who was also Steve's friend's BTW, asking what the fuck was this. He only replied that he was monitoring my performance for a few months, and today's show in the office only made them realize how I was only a liability to the office. I knew Steve was behind this. I called him over and over, begging for him to reconsider his decision, that we can still make a life together. I told him I was sorry for my mistakes, and I would spend my whole life making it up to him, but it all fell on deaf ears. His lawyers contacted me and told me about the divorce procedure, and it was best if I just cooperated with them because I didn't have money to fight the case or hire a lawyer. I tried to convince them that I was going to be the mother of Steve's child, and they should help me out instead of helping him. His lawyer said that I should be prepared for NIP, non-invasive prenatal paternity test, if I wanted to make claims that Steve was the father of my child. Well, yeah, that shut me up. I reached out to the last option, John, after talking to the lawyers. I thought that maybe he would want to be with me. After all, he knew that I was the mother of his child. But he just laughed and told me that he would rather die than be with a woman who cheated on her husband. So yeah, as of writing this post, I'm 14 weeks pregnant, living in that hostile kind of thing, still trying to figure out where to go. Steve hasn't said a word to me since that day, but he is consistently making everything terrible for me. John must have shared our intimate pictures with him, which Steve has forwarded to my family. Now they don't want to see me either. Steve helped my brother when he was starting his own startup, and now their loyalty is towards him rather than their own blood. Talk about a selfish world. That's all for now, Reddit. Let's see what happens next. I'm still hoping that Steve or John will come to their senses before I lose all my savings. I ruined my life for a man who didn't even turn to look at me when I fell. Thank you for reading my story, guys. Please go easy on me. Love, Claire.